I don't know. I just feel like the rappers I meet now, they're so different. Borderline moved me to tears just like realizing like how much his kids meant to him. Adam, you're around Lil Pump so early. You're around like Ski Mask and X and all these guys so early. And it's like, yeah, but I didn't know how to sign an artist at that time, you know? If I did, then I probably would have signed X.
Have you ever had to edit out an interview from your own, like, hey, we probably shouldn't, like not the artist or the individual asking you, but you're like, hey, we should cut this?
We edited out like, you know, people saying the F slur.
Yeah.
I think that, but besides that, things that we've deleted that it's almost always just stuff that they asked us to delete.
Yeah, because I remember you had interviewed, like, this is like back then, there's like these younger like fashion kids.
Yeah.
That wanted their interview deleted.
Yeah, because they fucking, dude, those kids, they were saying on BD and on GD the whole time in the interview.
I remember that.
And so then I had to edit it out. I had to go in and fucking add like a beep over every time that they said on BD or GD because they decided that this was going to get them killed because they were saying in like a totally sarcastic manner. It's a bunch of white kids. And then I didn't realize that when I put the beeps in the podcast that I had to turn the audio way down. Like the beep was way louder than the other audio. So everybody said that it was like mental torture trying to listen to it.
So they were hearing both at the same time.
They were hearing like beep, like it would just be so loud. It would like make you jump out of your seat when you watched it. I didn't realize because I didn't watch it until after I made it go live.
Were you editing them back? Because you didn't even edit them. You just had the phone and then you ran it one take. Right?
Yeah, I would run like an audio recording piece of software and then I would film on the iPhone and like most of the time, or like maybe half of the time, they would be properly synced up, and then like half of the time they would be like out of sync, and I would have to go through the whole thing and clip little pieces of audio to make it match up together. So I used to like go do 2 interviews at night and then stay up till 4 in the morning, getting both of the interviews ready in my room, and then drop them the next day.
Because you had more of like a hectic lifestyle back then. It was like more, you were doing more drugs back then, right?
Oh yeah, I used to party, fucking stay out. Like I did some classic interviews on like 2 hours sleep, for sure. And yeah, now I can't even imagine.
When was that shift? Because I remember you had stopped doing like any of like the pills or stuff like that. This was like maybe like, was that like 2018?
Yeah, I think 2018, 2019, I just kind of had a realization that the hangovers were like hurting too much, that it was just like really getting to me. And at that point I had a bunch of friends die. That's like around the time Peep died. It was also like when I just decided like, all right, I can't do this anymore. And I just stopped partying pretty much altogether at once.
Do you feel like the content started to shift more? Because it felt like at that time, a lot of it was not drug-induced content, but there were a lot of rappers that were promoting kind of like the drug lifestyle at that point. And then there was more of a transition towards, I don't remember what year it was exactly, where you guys kind of had more like, now it's like LA based, kind of more like street people involved in No Jumper.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like No Jumper realistically has always kind of like reflected rap in general. Like whatever's going on in rap tends to be the stuff that we're covering, with, you know, some stuff that we've kind of missed and some stuff that we emphasize a little bit more heavy. Like people always now point out that we cover a lot of street shit, but realistically, I mean, if you listen to rap, that's pretty much the stuff that is doing numbers or that people are interested in. So, you know, and I guess that's the stuff that I'm just more interested in rather than a lot of the like artsy ass rap stuff, which also realistically does not really do that many numbers and people don't really give a fuck about it, I don't think.
There is like a sub. I feel like those do more numbers on Twitter for some reason. There's kind of like a subsector of those like artsy rappers.
I mean, there's a million different types of rappers and like types of rap scenes and everything, but for me, it's just like kind of get in where you fit in type shit. It's just like, I don't know. I've always kind of just done the stuff that I felt like I gravitated towards, and it was never really intentional. It was more like one day I just sort of realized like, oh, fuck, like we've really been primarily interviewing like street rappers for the past few months. Like people like pick out trends in your content And for me, a lot of times I'm not really cognizant of it. I'm just doing so much content that I'm not really seeing how people are going to perceive the trends in that content. Like I remember in 2018 that there was just like a moment where we just got a lot of shit for interviewing too many porn stars, and it wasn't intentional. It was just like, that's just where I was at that time. Is that I just, maybe realistically, it was probably like I went to a couple parties and got a bunch of girls' numbers and just happened to line those all up, and I was just getting so much heat for it, and I'm just like not even aware of the fact that that's what the dynamic was starting to look like.
But didn't the numbers say otherwise? Because I feel like if it wasn't hitting, you wouldn't have continued doing it.
That's true. But then I just do so many fucking interviews that it's like in any given day, I might do 3 interviews that are totally the types of interviews that are going to do really, really well and make a bunch of money. And 3 of the other ones are just stuff that I'm personally into that are going to get 30,000 views. And to me, it's just kind of like, whatever. Like I do the ones that are more for passion and the ones that are more because they're viral or because they're going to get 2 million views. I do them kind of seamlessly. Like to me, I don't think of them that differently. And sometimes I'll realize, oh, I just spent 8 hours studying for an interview that's going to get 30,000 views. And then I did another interview that's going to get 1 million views, and I spent like 10 minutes getting ready for it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know.
What was the last interview that you had that went unexpectedly well? Not from a numbers perspective. Like, for instance, I was talking to KTO, and he said one of the interviews that he had was like one of his favorite interviews ever was with Southside, because the perception that he had before going into the interview was just what he saw online, and then the interview went well. He said he was like a really cool dude. So what was that last interview for you where you're like, I don't know how this interview is going to go, and then by the end of it you're like, wow, this was actually really a good time?
One that stands out to me is like recently I was doing an interview with a Cowboy from Rolling 60s who was worked with Nipsey Hussle and stuff, and I was excited to do the interview in the first place, but then he pretty much moved me to tears when he was talking about how he stopped doing hard drugs because of his kids. And that was just like a moment of like, it just like hit me, like borderline moved me to tears, just like realizing like how much his kids meant to him. And I just really didn't see that coming in that interview, even though it was overall like probably one of the best interviews I've done in recent memory. But yeah, that was definitely a moment that really took me by surprise. Or even like The Game, when I was interviewing The Game, and I think the best thing that I could get is just to do an interview that's good enough that people just get outside of their box of who they usually are. And like The Game during that interview, like he just turned into this really like silly, bubbly, funny version of himself. And he even acknowledged, he's like, I don't get like this around people that I don't know. And I was just like, that's so sick that I just fucking somehow through the goofy ass questions I was asking, or the fact that we rolled him a blunt, like had got him into a place where he was acting like a version of himself that he doesn't normally get to be on camera. I felt like that was kind of an honor.
Yeah. I need to watch that Game one. I haven't watched that one yet. Back then, it felt like you had more of a close relationship / friendship with a lot of the people you interviewed, a lot of rappers. Were there any regrets getting that close to rappers in terms of being able to effectively still do your job?
It was just that it was like more of a natural part of my life at that time. Like my life at that time was, I'm in the bike shop working and like doing podcasts and shit all day, and then I go out at night. And I'm like going to shows, getting fucked up. I mean, you make great friends through getting fucked up, whether it's drinking or doing drugs, whatever. Or even like when you think about Pump and like Ski Mask and how I ended up getting cool with all those guys. It's just literally like I extended my ticket. I was on a family vacation with my family in Florida for a week. I extended my ticket so I could stay 2 extra days so I could go to a couple of different shows, and one of them was like a Lil Pump, Ski Mask, Wi-Fi's funeral show, whatever. Now I probably would not even go to that show, you know? I definitely wouldn't like extend my ticket and get a hotel room for an additional couple nights. Like, you know, like the equivalent show right now, you know? Like realistically, I'm just kind of jaded. At that time, I was just like chasing after something so hard, just trying to get into the position. Like it was my first time really like being around stars like that, or even, you know, they're underground, but it's like I could tell that this was happening, you know? And like I even said to my girl the other day, because we were talking about, I forget, some celebrity and how when you just see people around him, how they just dick ride him and they just follow him around and they go so out of their way to be around this dude just because he's rich and famous. And I just told my girl, I was like, I can never be like that with anybody. Like, I could never be like you. I was like, you always pretty much see me playing the main character. You know, like I'm not ever really like going somewhere to be the backup to somebody else. And she goes, yeah, but you were kind of like that with Lil Pump. And I'm like, okay, yeah, you're right. I was like, I definitely like, or even like X kind of, but not really because I was only around him like 2 times in real life. But like, you know, like at that time, I don't know, I just kind of, I was a little bit too caught up in the swing of things, but then also I was really living that life. And like, when I think about it, I had this super close friendship with X, and then I had a super close friendship with Juice. And I kind of feel like after that, that was it. You know, in terms of like really maintaining like relationships of talking to people that much and shit, I don't know. I kind of feel like it just kind of made me like cut off from people in that way. And now I focus more on like the business and the co-hosts that I'm building on here, and I feel like that's who I'm like. I just have way more focus on that, and I definitely like see. I don't know. I just feel like the rappers I meet now, they're so different that it's like I'm unlikely to go that hard out of my way to develop a friendship with them. It's like that part of my life has kind of been replaced with like family and kids and like all that side of shit, that it's like now I just treat the No Jumper shit as a little bit more straight up business type stuff. And it's like, hey, we could have an open DM, we could have each other's phone numbers, we could talk, whatever. But in terms of like, I'm not like sitting on FaceTime with you like I used to do with X, or I'm not like going to your mansion to kick it on the couch and just hang out and fucking pop a Xan or whatever. Like that shit, to me, that feels like a million miles away, a million years ago.
Do you think like family life has assisted? Because it feels like the past couple of years, like No Jumper has scaled like exponentially compared to the previous like 5 years where growth was already going up.
I mean, it used to just be like me, and then the last 2 years we just started adding hosts. So now it's like, oh, I'm making all the content that I would have done normally, realistically more, because I just have like a better system around me so I can do more interviews, and then also have all these other guys doing interviews like Sharp and T-Rel and Duno and everybody on the platform. And so, yeah, I don't know. I mean, the family thing just made me like want to take my life a lot more serious. It made me really like just kind of take a step back and just be like, damn, like I realistically am almost 40. I have like maybe like 30, 40 years of productivity left on earth, and I just got to get it. And sometimes I feel like I'm not going anywhere near hard enough, in the sense of like, you know, what is the next level for this business? When I listen to podcasts with like real entrepreneurs who are talking about how they're trying to, you know, like just build businesses, like they're more focused on just like building businesses and creating solutions to problems, where for me it's always just been like, make content, make the best content you can, and like build the business around that. And I don't know, sometimes I wonder like, what is the thing motivating me? Is it to just produce as much content as possible, or at a certain point does that start to feel like kind of a waste, or like it's not the best use of my time? But definitely scaling the business to something beyond just me is a really important part of all this for me. It would be really hard for me to just be like Logan Paul, even though Logan Paul is fucking huge, but like everything Logan Paul does, pretty much he's like, well, no, you can't say him, because now he's got products, he's got all these different businesses that he's built. So that to me would be exciting. But like a lot of YouTubers, you know, it's like it's just them talking into the camera, and I could do that. I get how to do that. I could probably sit on Twitch all day, every day, and have like a pretty dope life. Realistically, I could probably make 6 figures a year from just sitting on Twitch a lot. But I feel like I have to do more. I feel like I have to like build something beyond that.
I was also having this conversation with Bobbleland for like maybe like an hour plus, where we were going back and forth, and I was kind of telling him that we're not really businesses, being him, we're just like well-paid like contractors, because we don't, number one, we don't have a product necessarily, we're kind of the product, and if you stop talking to the camera,
right,
it just dies, as opposed to, let's say, like Logan Paul has like a Prime or something.
Right.
And it is tied to his like likeness. So if his likeness tanks, probably people will stop buying the product. But it's different from, let's say, like an artist who has a record label. Now he has a business because there's people working that are making music that he doesn't have to make.
Right.
And then he owns this catalog.
Yeah, one day you're a rapper and all of your success is basically based off you recording music and then you doing deals around that music, basically. You know, you get a sponsorship, whatever, that's because you put out a bunch of good music. But then once you start a label, and then you can spend your time finding artists, and you could potentially find one artist who could make you millions of dollars a year for the rest of your life. Yeah, that's like a different level. There's all these levels you reach in your life of like different levels of satisfaction. Like when I always think back to when I first started playing online poker and was doing all right with it. And like at that time in my life, if I was making a couple $1,000 a month and I got to sit on the computer 50 hours a week playing this game, that was all I could ask for in the entire world. I don't have to have a job and I'm making enough money to get by. Cool. Then I start my fucking BMX website and I start, you know, I'm producing content. I'm getting reactions from people with the stuff that I'm making. I'm making more money and I'm creating content that people like, and I have this freedom. And that gives me like an additional layer of happiness. Then I start No Jumper and it starts to become like, oh, I'm making content that people really like. It's scaling way better than the BMX stuff. And I'm making way more money to the point where now I actually feel like, oh, I'm doing what I want, I'm independent, I'm reaching a fuckload more people, and I'm actually like stacking money to be able to build like real wealth, you know? So it's like, I felt super happy when I was 19 and I just got this basic level of sustenance going, and like now I'm kind of at a different level of both productivity and happiness, I guess.
One of the things that you did was you pivoted well in terms of business model, because a lot of people were relying on ads at YouTube at that time. And a lot of people's ads got cut. Like, for example, like Akademiks had just gone on Everyday Struggle at that point, and he barely like uploaded. You guys, you said you had taken like a hit where you guys were like making like 40 a month.
Yeah, we went from like 45K one month to like 5,000 the next month. So that was very tough. That's when we started streaming and playing people's music, and then all of a sudden I remember I had a month where I made like 100 grand doing that. So then that just became like, oh my God, this is the thing that's gonna save me.
Yeah, because then you guys kept that incorporated, as you guys still do that to this day, right?
Yeah, less. We'll do it like once every 2 weeks or whatever. I wish I had more time to do it, but yeah, that's definitely a pretty good revenue stream. And we definitely find a lot of freaky, weird ass music and stuff that could potentially like, you know, and I like that too, because it's kind of like people can apply to work for us like that. Like people have sent in like a 5-minute audition tape and they send $100 and they're like, watch this on stream. And it's like, realistically, if you're dope on camera and I see that, I'm just gonna be like, okay, let's get him in here, or let's talk to him on Zoom, or let's learn more about him, you know, if they jump out at me. So I think it's good to have that as just a way to be like, hey, I'm not gonna be able to check out everybody's stuff, but realistically, the price is set at a level that I think is relatively reasonable. You could buy a pair of shoes, or you could get me to watch your fucking video for 5 minutes. You know, I think it seems fair. It seems like a pretty good way to, like, because I just realized as soon as they took that YouTube money away, which our YouTube money has gotten a lot better since then, you know, it's still not like incredible, but it's good. But I realized in that moment of like, oh, all those DMs of people begging me to listen to their music, those are all people that could potentially help my fucking business become a thing if the YouTube money's gonna be kind of weird.
There was a time where you guys were also posting music videos.
Yeah, we used to do that.
I think it was one of the Comethazine music video, the first ones that really took off. Those on the No Jumper channel.
Yeah, we posted a bunch of music videos that did really, really good, and then we also like posted a ton of music videos that got like 5,000 views, and that is kind of weird because it's like, I mean, the audio file that we uploaded at one point of like Lil Skies and Lil Xan has like 9 million views. And I'm sure that it would say that we got like 10,000, 20,000 subscribers or whatever from that. Like probably a lot of subscribers from that. So it's kind of like posting like a YouTube short, you know? You like post a music video and it does really well. It'll like get attention on your channel and shit, even though it's kind of not the exact stuff that you normally would have on your channel. But yeah, we were like charging too little. And it was fucking the image up of the brand too much, so I just stopped doing that a couple years ago.
Yeah. One of the things that kind of went crazy was when you did the Graham Stephan interview. and then
Yeah.
that clip. I think I had posted that clip, and then other rappers were kind of not upset about it, but I thought they were upset.
Polo G put it on a story, and he was saying something. Yeah.
Yeah, he was like they should get paid to show up or whatever the case.
Uh-huh.
Do you regret saying that, or?
I don't regret saying it just because it's like, I don't know. I feel like there's a lot of people who don't realize that those are the types of numbers that are attainable if you kill it as a content creator. Because I'm kind of like familiar with how much money roughly like Akademiks and Vlad make and everything. And it's like, I would say we're all in the same ballpark, you know? Like it's a pretty big ballpark, let's say that, because I don't know exact numbers for them. But we're all making very significant money off of our self-owned businesses. And I think that a lot of times the kids don't realize, like they look at a little baby and they think like, oh, he's making a lot of money, so that's it. But then meanwhile, like they see us and they like, none of us ever really talk about that. Like, I mean, somebody like Ack will say, yeah, I got hella money, whatever, but he doesn't really throw dollar amounts out there, whatever. And so I went on Graham Stephan's podcast, and I know that that's how he always clickbaits his shit, is he'll always be like, this dude is making this amount of money, this guy's making $100,000 a minute, whatever. And so I just had that number in my head. And realistically, that number is probably before tax, and it doesn't really take into account the employees getting paid, whatever. It's certainly like an inflated number, you know, probably. It's not like I'm taking home after tax $1 million a month. That would be crazy, because realistically, I would probably have to be bringing in like $3 million a month to be able to fucking bring home a million with taxes paid, right? So yeah, I just said it, and a few people tripped out. And in terms of like Polo G or whoever's saying that about interviews, I mean, let's be real. A new rapper is going to get interviewed for free or even pay to get interviewed. Now, we don't offer paid interviews, but that's how it's going to work, because they need the attention. An established rapper like Polo G could probably get a decent check from a place like, you know, an up-and-coming platform or whatever, or you hear about corporate deals. I remember one time I was like trying to get Cameron to do an interview with me, like at a specific time, and they mentioned like money or like, does it pay or whatever, and I'm like, oh, we don't really do that. And they pointed out that like, I think he had just got paid 20 grand by Facebook to do an interview, you know, or something like that. And you know, that you can do that if you want to go do like a super corporate interview, they probably will pay you. Or if you want to go do an interview with some weird ass place, whatever. Or you could go to a Breakfast Club or a No Jumper or Akademiks or whatever, who are platforms that I would say never or almost never pay for interviews, and actually get a designer interview with somebody who's really going to kill the interview, you know? And there are potentially people I would pay, you know? Like I've cut people like small checks in the past, like just because they've been like, oh, I need hotel, or, you know, I gotta fly out or whatever. And I'll kick them a little something just because it's like, you know, if they know you're going to make 10 or 20 grand off the interview and you're not down to give them like $500 for a flight or whatever, I guess I could understand. Although we don't even put sponsors on a lot of our episodes. So it's like, we might do an interview that gets, you know, if it gets 1 million views, maybe we make 5 grand. Maybe if it does really good, we make 8, 9 grand. So it's like, you know, most interviews don't do 1 million views. If it's going to get 100,000 views and we're going to make $900, well, I'm definitely not paying you $1,000 to come do an interview. I'm going to make $900 off. Now, if you have sponsors though, like if you could have a $10,000 brand deal on the video, all of a sudden that kind of changes things, you know?
Have you guys ever been paid to do interviews in the past?
No.
Really?
No.
Because that's what everyone thought, including me, when it was like when you guys interviewed Baby Goth.
No, I just did that because it was interesting. Like, she's part of the scene that I was kind of a part of. Like, I mean, her first video, I did a behind the scenes of the video with Trippie Redd and Lil Xan and shit. You know, I just like knew her. And at the time, like, it was interesting because she had this big fallout with this dude who signed her, and she was just like talking all about that and everything, and I was just kind of interested in her story. So, nah, a lot, but people were like, is she an industry plant, or was she an industry plant at the time? I mean, if she was or whatever, that's still interesting. I mean, she definitely had some money behind her. She had, like, you know, people in the music industry who were trying to help blow her up, you know? That's who she fell out with.
At that point in time, it seemed like they were trying to prop up a lot of artists that just didn't take off. They were like 6 months and they were just completely gone by the wayside.
Over and over and over. They saw Smoke, Perp, and Pump, and they were just like, oh, we can do that. Like, You saw a ton of people jumping on that, yeah. That's why I used to be able to, and I was basically dealing with like tax shit. I had like a former business associate who had basically fucked up my tax situation really bad. So like, as soon as I realized that No Jumper is like, as soon as we start to get to the point where we're making like 6 figures a month from the streaming plus the YouTube plus the merch, whatever, it started to be like, oh, your tax situation is fucked. You owe like $1 million. So basically, I'm just grinding, doing these live streams, listening to these fucking SoundCloud rappers like every night. But I was making like 10 grand a night because it was such a crazy SoundCloud rapper wave. And I'm doing this like 2-3 nights a week. And I just kept doing it because I had to fucking pay off this huge fucking tax debt. And now everything with the business is cool where it's like, we got it into a good place. But like, sometimes like people will be like, oh, like, they'll be like, when I hung out with you at this time or when you did this podcast, you were an asshole. And it's like, I don't even want to admit it, but I'm like, bro, I was dealing with a lot of fucking stress that I never talked about on camera at that time. Because I was just having to fucking just basically pay off this big ass debt that this fucking idiot who was associated with me fucking ran up.
And this was like a business related to No Jumper or on some shit?
It was basically the BMX side of things. My tax shit was just fucked up with that.
After the incident happened with the guy came in with like the gun, did that cause you to like completely change the idea of, hey, people are going to know where I am at what hours of the day every day and just be able to walk in?
Yeah, it definitely changed everything. Just because it was like, before, like, think about it. When I started that store in Melrose, I could stand out there on the street and talk to whoever all fucking day. And I would have, if I stood out there for 8 hours, I would probably have 10 people say what up to me, Or like maybe a little bit more, because it's like I had already done the X interview and a couple other interviews at that time, but I wasn't famous like that. And then like fast forward like 2.5, 3 years, if I go outside for 5 minutes, I'm going to have a circle of like 40 people on the street, and people are like posting me on Instagram, and then more people start pulling up to the point where I like literally couldn't stand out on the street, which is crazy because it's like, it just went, like I got to see this thing unfold in front of my eyes where people just went from treating me one way to treating me a completely different way. And I was doing all this normal shit. I was just riding BMX every day, riding my bike places, like just fucking chilling outside, no gun, no nothing, not even thinking about anything. And I kind of like kept that going for a long time because I didn't really have anything in front of my face that was like, oh, you need to change your lifestyle. And then that thing happened. And even the thing with the Russ's Goons fucking jumping me in the nail salon, whatever. Yeah, a lot of that kind of made me start having to take myself a lot more serious.
The crazy thing about that Russ incident is you didn't even know who had done that for like months after, right?
I didn't know for like a year. And then he was on live stream with Akademiks, and he said something like, that dude Adam22 got touched too. But it's like the connection was breaking up at the moment that he said it. And it was like it wasn't clear to the people watching. Like they didn't understand that that's what he was saying. But then Ak calls me right after and is like, yo, like Russ just said this shit. It was breaking up on the broadcast, but I heard what he was saying because he was just talking to me or some shit, right? And immediately I start putting it together in my head. I'm like, well, there's a motive, and I guess he could have sent somebody. So it's like it started to make sense in my head or whatever. And then I sat on it for a couple of days because I was like, I don't have to expose this to the world. Like, I could just leave this and nobody would know. Like, nobody would ever know if I don't say anything about it, right? And then after a couple of days, I was still angry about it. And I was just like, you know what? Fuck this. I'm calling him out. So I went on Twitter and just sort of like raged out about it a little bit. And then he responded, I think, and we went back and forth, whatever. And then ultimately culminated in, I think it was Bootleg Kev or like one of the radio DJs. They like called me with Russ on the line, right? Or they called me first to like see, like, are you down to like squash it with Russ on the phone or like talk to him right now? And I thought that I was live on the radio. So I'm like, yeah, all right. Like we get on the phone and I'm doing this sort of like polished, like public facing version of the conversation, but I didn't realize we weren't on the radio. So then as soon as I found out that it wasn't being broadcast, I like immediately wished that I had had the conversation differently. and I'm not sure in what ways, but it's like the way you talk when you think that like millions of people are going to be listening is way different than the way you would just talk behind the scenes or whatever. But I mean, ultimately, I don't really look at Russ like he did something so fucked up that like, you know, like somebody fucking knocked you out for no reason, or not that I got knocked out, but if somebody fucked you up for no reason, you would just not be able to get over it until you got some kind of revenge or whatever. But like, once I talked to Russ and realized like how many fucking shitty tweets I had written about him, like talking shit to him, I was like, you know what? I respect him getting me jumped. Like, I would like to think that I would do the same thing in that situation. So I really don't hold any sort of contempt for him for it. I haven't seen him or anything ever, but you know, I can't be mad at him for it, honestly.
Do you think the level of hate that he got was warranted? Because I don't think I've ever seen the rap collective, rappers, producers, etc., all just take aim at one person for at least 12 months.
I mean, he did make a bunch of sort of bad decisions, you know, or at least like said things that were taken out of context, or if they weren't taken out of context, they're just crazy. I will forever say that the Zans and Perks shirt was cringe, you know, like there's a bunch of like stuff.
That's a fair point.
You know, he did a bunch of things that like people didn't like at that time or whatever. Do I think that he actually deserved that much vitriol from people? Not really, because especially like most of those people, myself included, like I've almost never heard his music, I would think. He just kind of became like a punching bag at a certain point. And it's like, he did say a bunch of things that I thought were like silly or like made him look egotistical or whatever. Remember he had all this shit because he had a Vlad interview where he was talking shit about producers.
Yeah.
You know, it was a bunch of those things. It wasn't just like the SoundCloud rappers or whatever. So yeah, I don't know. But like in terms of myself, I was just using him as like a punchline on Twitter, just like making jokes about him like really bad. And I didn't think it was that bad. And then he kind of like pointed out a bunch of the things I said, and I'm like, oh well, that's a good point. You're right. That was pretty fucked up. So I mean, I don't know. But like people forget that like J. Cole got that same treatment before him. Wale got it before either of them.
Yeah,
Remember when Wretch said it should have been Wale when Yams died?
Yeah.
I mean, that was like the gnarliest tweet at the time, but that's like rap has always kind of had a place for like somebody that they sort of want to shit on and put into that punchline role, although I don't know if anybody does that so much anymore.
But Wale, I feel like Wale just unjustified got it for no reason. A lot of it was his music. I remember it was 2014 Twitter. Tweets were just going viral, just completely trashing Wale's just music.
But okay, this is the thing. At that time, Wale had a lot in common with Russ, where like he would make a lot of like controversial statements, or like he clearly held himself in a higher regard than maybe the general population did, you know? Yeah. And it's like he was a well-liked rapper the same way that Russ is a popular rapper, but like Russ said a lot of things that basically made it look like he kind of thought everybody else was whack because they maybe didn't understand his greatness or whatever. That's probably a massive oversimplification of what he actually said, but you know, and then like Wale, kind of the same thing. Like around that time, he would just say like cringy shit that just like turned him into that punchline. With J. Cole, it was more like him just being so like projecting, like being this like naive sort of like, you know, making the songs about his virginity and just being so sentimental and heartfelt. Like rap will always look for a guy like that to shit on.
But I think it was
a Will Smith.
Yeah, I think it was J. Cole fans that got J. Cole the hate more than J. Cole himself, because the thing became a meme. The whole like, oh, double platinum with no features.
Right,
that was a meme.
And that's like not really his doing, although he probably said that in a song or something, I'm guessing, but
I don't even think he mentioned it.
No, okay,
But like it's just his, like certain people's fan base make other people look at them like, oh, like for example, I think like Playboi Carti's fan base is like that right now.
Yeah. Where we would all describe it as his fan base being a bunch of goth lunatics. Yeah, it might be an oversimplification, but we all know there's a lot of truth in it too.
Yeah, like for instance, like people that'll say, like let's say a producer that came out within the past 2-3 years. Mm-hmm. Like for example, like I know someone that says, oh, Nick Mirror is like top 10 hip hop producers of all time. I'm like, the guy's been out for like 4 years.
Right.
That's like a huge leap
dude from
to make.
Kids Take Over said that A Whole Lot of Red was one of the top 5 hip hop albums of all time.
I think he said top 10 albums overall. that was the.
I mean, that's just like amazing. Like I couldn't even be mad at him when he said that, because the fact that he was able to say that with confidence just shows that he is young and he's excited about music that is coming out these days. And in 2002, I might have told you that Get Rich or Die Trying was one of the greatest rap albums of all time. And history said that, oh, actually, he has a point. Like, you could debate that. It's not maybe not solid for top 5, but maybe like top 10 people would say, okay, whatever. Like, like when I loved The Blueprint, I might have told you like Jay-Z is like the best rapper right now. And it turns out in the long run that he had that kind of career. But, also maybe at a certain point I would have said like Riff Raff was the best rapper alive. And historically, that might not necessarily pan out, even though he has his fans.
I would have said he's one of the most underrated rappers at that point.
I love him. Yeah, we listened to him like a lot for years.
Like I feel like that Peach, especially when he came and did the interview with you with like 2 girls, that Peach Panther album I feel like was the peak of Riff Raff, and then I think he just made a bunch of money and disappeared for like 2 straight years.
Well, he signed to Diplo, and like they tried to do the EDM thing, and then it just kind of stalled out at a certain point. I don't know.
You had spent a decent chunk of time in China, right?
I went to China, I think 2 times, like for BMX contests both times, I think. Like a couple weeks each time, maybe.
What years were these?
Oh, fuck. Maybe 2012-ish era. Like around then I went a couple times.
How different would you say the media representation of China is in America to how you actually experienced being there?
I mean, the whole thing about it is that you don't understand anything that they're saying. They don't understand anything you're saying. It's a culture that very much keeps to itself. So how much I really got from their culture, I'm not sure, because it's like you don't really get to like talk to random people. Like the only people we're getting to talk to was like the couple of BMX dudes who had like some English, And so there I'm kind of like leaning on them to like ask them about all the different parts of their culture and stuff, because there's so many weird things that you see when you're there, whether it's like, I remember just riding by like a park, and you would see like 200 old people just dancing together in a park. And I just turned to my fucking tour guide dude, and I'm like, what the fuck is that? And he's like, well, they have to have sex, so this is how they get together. And I'm just like, oh, okay. Like this is like a social like meeting place, but they just go to the park and they dance. And I'm just like, what the fuck? I remember like just getting so many stares of just like I was the biggest freak they had ever seen. Cause like I'm tall, I'm white, I have tattoos, People were just like staring at me. Like they don't stare because they're super polite, but then like I would walk, I would like notice sometimes people just staring at me. Like, and even one of my friends pointed out to me, he's like, when you walk out of this corner store, like look at all the people around. And I walk out and like 80 people were all looking at me that had been hanging out there before, but they're all like having a conversation about me. Like just being white or having tattoos or whatever is like the craziest shit ever to them. So it was a wild experience, and I probably would not go back realistically.
Yeah, because I just had a friend who was living in Russia, maybe like right before, like actually during when the war broke out. And he's living in a bunch of other countries, like black dude from America. And one of the shocking things was like he told me like it was his favorite place that he had ever spent time in. I was like, really? He's like, yeah, the media representation is like nothing what it's actually like for the people that live there.
Well, people's lives out there are like, you just avoid the government at all costs, Like I remember I met this like Irish couple that had moved to Shanghai and like started a tattoo shop. And I'm like, it's communist. Like, how does that play out? Whatever. And they basically were just like, it's communist, like ideologically, but business-wise, it's totally capitalist. And like for us, the name of the game is just don't start problems with the government. Like you just gotta conform, play by the rules, don't stand out too much, whatever, and you'll be all right. But yeah, definitely, it's a wild place.
What goes into your decision making when hiring and more importantly like firing people? Because it's been a couple of people that I feel like it's been very few that you've actually fired that were like long standing.
Yeah, I mean it is weird because it's like you would want to spend a ton of time working directly with every single person that you hire to like really get an idea of how good they're going to be before you take on the big decision of hiring them. Right? But then in reality, that would just be so time consuming, and I have so much shit going on that it's like, you try to get a good idea of what their character is, you call their references, whatever, you check their resume, and then you just kind of hire people, and then realistically try to just be upfront with them, or like, this is kind of what I've learned, try to be upfront from the beginning of like, we're hiring you to do this, like we're gonna give it like 3 months to see how it works, but if it doesn't work, then we're just gonna let you know, and just try to make that clear from the beginning, is that like, this is pretty much like performance based, and we want to give you like a long-term position, but realistically it's like, we don't want to solidify that in advance, which is like, it's just tough, because it's like, at first I was just hiring my friends, people who fucking were just around, and then it's like, once you really want people who are actually going to kill it and like work their asses off, you just realize like, oh, a lot of my friends are not that. So yeah, that could be a tough reality check.
What about like firing people?
Firing people, I mean, I think you just have to like give them enough chances that you have a bulletproof reason, Like, you have to really be able to say, this is why. And like, you don't have to say that publicly, and you don't have to say that to them, but you at least have to be able to justify it 100% to yourself of why this is just not going to work out. And it is weird. It's like breaking up with a girl to a lesser extent, where it's like, you have a lot built up together, and, you shutting the door on that is the end of anything that might one day become. But yeah, I try to like really communicate over and over my unhappiness if it is going in that direction. Like, I would hate for it to take them by surprise,
When your Atlantic deal had ended, kind of, you guys released 1 or 2 songs.
I think 2.
After that was done, did you just think like, okay, I'm kind of like done with the music thing? I dipped my toe in it enough, or?
So the Atlantic deal, at that time, I had like a lot of labels trying to sign me, right? And I really didn't want to do it, because my head was just in the game of like, I want to do interviews, build this company, and like anything else that I do outside of that with the music, whatever, it's just like, I don't know, like even to this day, I've never had any involvement with the creation of music. I don't go to the studio. I don't care. I don't offer up my fucking opinion in the studio. I don't know how to make a beat. I've never like, I remember like one time I was in the studio with a rapper, and they like used a word wrong, and I like butted in, and I was like, yo, the way you use that word is like wrong grammatically. Like, you got to say this. I forget what it was. And he fixed it. And that gave me a little bit of a thrill of like, oh, I just made that song better. And if this was like a serious song, I would probably get writing credits on it. But either way, like, that's just not me. Like, I have nothing. I don't feel like I have anything to offer an artist besides like promotion. And I didn't really want to do that deal in the first place. It's just like the dollar amount kept getting pumped up to the point where I was like, okay, now I got to do it, because it's like, it would just feel stupid to walk away from this amount of money. And then like, let's just talk about what my experience was with Atlantic. It was like, I would go in every week, maybe every 2 weeks, and just sit with them for like an hour and talk about stuff. I would bring them artists that I was interested in signing, and they would always either be like somebody who was already in a bidding war, or so like the dollar amount would get too high and they wouldn't want to spend that much money, so then all of a sudden, okay, that's not happening. Or like YNW Melly, I would have signed Melly, but he was already signed. But he came out to fucking Atlantic, and like they flew him out and everything, and they were so fucking mad when they realized he was already signed. But we were like super close to signing him, which that right now, if that had gone slightly differently, if he hadn't already been signed, you would regard me as Adam, YNW Melly's manager, the guy who signed YNW Melly, and that would be like a big accolade in my history as a whatever person doing this. And maybe if I had gotten that taste of success, I would have liked it, and I would have like kept trying to find new artists, But ultimately, like, that doesn't really, like, I don't know. I'm a control freak. I like to control everything that I'm fucking doing. And when I think about signing an artist, all I think about is the extent to which I'm not going to be in control, in which they're going to be running around, doing drugs, fucking girls, doing whatever. And I'm going to want them to take the music serious. And it's probably, are they going to? And then also, I'm like the harshest critic of music. So I kind of a lot of times feel like I'll see somebody, I'll think that they have like a good song, or I'll think that they're dope, like maybe I could sign them. And then I'll hear a few more songs and I'm like, whatever. You know, like it just, I don't know. Like I just don't, there's been very few artists that I was really geeked up enough that I wanted to sign. And especially now, I mean, just rap doesn't really like feel that inspired lately, you know?
Yeah, now it feels like even like the straight mid artists, even if they have just a tiny bit of a following, they're already signed somewhere.
Oh yeah. And that's another crazy thing because people always are like, oh, Adam, you're around Lil Pump so early, you're around like Ski Mask and X and all these guys so early, and it's like, yeah, but I didn't know how to sign an artist at that time, you know? If I did, then I probably would have signed X, and that would have been crazy. Like if I knew what I know now when I met X, I would have signed him, and history would have been made. I didn't. Orlando knew how to sign an artist and had the game already on lock, so he goes to fucking the prison or the jail in Florida and he signs them because he's already there visiting Kodak in jail, right? That's how he signed X. And
Wait, how did he sign X?
because he was visiting Kodak in the jail in Florida.
And they were in the same jail?
Yeah. And X was in the same jail. And so he goes and does a meeting with him too and hits it off, and that's how he ended up signing them.
Wow. So he was Kodak's lawyer?
Kodak, he signed Kodak.
Oh,
Orlando,
he signed Kodak.
Which I have a classic interview with him.
Damn.
If you want to learn the A&R game, could definitely teach you a lot.
I'd never heard that story before.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy, but like, I don't know. I just say that to say a lot of the artists that people see me with early and think, oh, Adam discovered that guy, they're already signed. They already had a manager. They already, you know, like they might have seemed super early to you, but in reality, it was already like, you know, their situation was already kind of figured out, you know.
Do you think like existing in hip hop, there's been some level of unfair treatment for you being like white in terms of, it could just be comments or people diminishing certain opinions that you may put out? Or
Yeah, I mean, people definitely will use the fact that you're white to diminish your whole opinion or argument and like not feel the need to even begin to address the substance of what you're saying. Like, and that's almost like every time I've ever been like dogpiled on Twitter. If I say something about rap that people don't agree with, it's like, you know, almost never are they actually questioning the thing that you said. They're just saying that you're old or white or whatever. It's like, you know, for sure. Yeah, that's, sometimes I wish I could get more of a regular conversation out of people. Like when I tried to do the podcast with Dame Dash, and I realized pretty quickly that it was just going to be him calling me racist every time I like said anything that made sense. That was just like, all right, like I wish that these conversations were capable of being more, but it turns out that doesn't seem like it's going to be the case. But then at the same time, it's like some percentage of rap fans are going to gravitate towards hearing a white guy talk about rap music. But then some percentage of black fans and shit are going to want to not hear from a white guy talking about rap music. So I feel like there's positives and there's negatives that might like basically sort of balance itself out. And I think at the end of the day, like the person who's got the best commentary about rap is probably going to succeed regardless of race.
Yeah, because I've seen people kind of use that towards Cole Bennett, whereas there were a lot of black videographers that were way more poppin' than Cole Bennett, but I feel like they kind of just got trapped in a certain style and a certain pocket. Like for example, like Laka Films was going crazy with Famous Dex, and I'm not sure like what he did because they kind of just get a formula and they keep going.
Yeah.
And Cole Bennett kind of had that formula, but he continuously like tried to innovate it and become more than a videographer, but also up the quality of the videos.
Yeah, like the dumbass's explanation for Cole's success is like, he's white. The person who's even paying a lick of attention's explanation is like, dude, he took being a videographer and turned it into something that we never knew was possible in terms of building a brand around it, building all these adjacent businesses, and, you know, really creating scarcity with his videos and getting the people tapped in and excited to see what he was going to drop next, you know, to like reduce that to just him being white. Now, what could be the case is maybe Cole comes from a good family background where financially he didn't have to worry about just like paying the rent every single month. I don't know. Maybe it comes from more humble beginnings than I'm making seem right there. But you know what I mean? Like, you know, somebody like Laka or whoever, they might have like been in a position where they didn't have as much capital to work with, so they kind of had to go a different direction. But I think Cole, one of his geniuses, honestly, is being from Chicago and realizing that he wasn't gonna really build his business on the street rap. You know, like he's basically fucking left that shit alone almost 100%. Like he's done videos for Dirk and like a few people that you could say are like gang related, but it's not like he shoots the gang related videos or whatever. You know, it's like Chicago's known for this certain type of shit, and he has completely avoided all that shit pretty much, right? I mean, it's pretty remarkable, really, that he was able to avoid all that and never even say it or never even draw attention to the fact that he was, because I feel like if Cole had said in one interview, like, I don't fuck with drill music, that shit is bad for society, that immediately like his public persona would have been kind of like tainted in a way if he were to say that.
It's like that one comment that Post Malone made where he was like, oh, I'm not really listening to rap right now, and people took it as him like condemning rap.
Nah, Cole's the GOAT because he saw what was possible in terms of like building his own personality up, in terms of building his channel up and everything, and now it's like the world's his fucking oyster, you know?
I feel like he captures moments well in terms of getting his brand alongside something. For example, he didn't, like Lil Yachty's song that just came out, the Poland leak, he didn't have anything to do with it blowing up. The song was already going crazy, but they moved. This is also credit to Lil Yachty and their team for moving so quickly on it, but they shot a video for that in like 3 days, and they just put it out.
Right.
And now that's going crazy, but the moment of that Poland song is now associated with Cole Bennett.
Right.
As opposed to maybe like back then, it was like, hey, this Cole Bennett video and this song merged together, and now this song's gonna take off afterwards.
Yeah, even somebody who like doesn't really know that much about what's going on with rap will be like, oh, so and so they got the Cole Bennett video, you know, like that cosign means something. I'm watching the new Blink-182 video the other day, and I realized that there's a Lyrical Lemonade logo in the corner, which is like pretty rare because usually Cole only shoots for his channel.
Yeah.
But he shot that video and it went on their channel.
I'm pretty sure he shot like one of the MGK videos before he just like.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Took an up. Yeah, he was like a black. You've definitely seen the cover for it. It was like a black and white. He had like black and white face paint or something like that.
Yeah, but Cole did a 6ix9ine video at one point too that I think went on World Star, or maybe went on 6ix9ine's channel.
It had to go on World Star or 6ix9ine.
Which I always thought that was very strange.
Yeah, I didn't think that happened.
Because if I'm 6ix9ine, I would have wanted to be on Lyrical Lemonade, more so than World Star and more so than my own channel. That would be a very important cosign for him at that point in his career.
But I don't think 6ix9ine wanted to be associated with, like, even though he was the epitome of a SoundCloud rapper, I don't think he wanted to be associated with that pocket, and World Star was more like, oh, here are like the gangster rappers.
Being on World Star is more street at the time, at least. Yeah, that's true.
I think that's probably what they leaned more towards.
It's just like, why have Cole Bennett shoot your video if you're gonna put it on World Star? It's strange. I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm not 100% sure too. It might have been on 6ix9ine's channel. I don't know. Either way, that's weird to imagine them hanging out on some island.
Yeah. Oh, that was the one that Akademiks was with them. Okay, I exactly remember what you're talking about now.
Yeah.
Because I was thinking of the Gummo music video, but that definitely wasn't it.
No. After that.
How come you guys don't take that many sponsors?
We just like are doing, I think we're doing a better and better job of consistently getting them. But yeah, I mean, we're down. It's just kind of like, we're not like going like super out of our way to get them. And then also we just don't, like, it's become so much easier to get sponsors now. So now we're leaning into it more in the sense of like, have you ever watched a full $1 Million Worth of Game episode?
Yes. Well, like once maybe.
That's a lot of, have you seen like the fucking crazy amount of advertising on some of it? I mean, you see that and you're kind of like, fuck, like they probably just put like $80,000 worth of ads on this podcast. Like maybe I should, like maybe I'm insane for just putting videos out and just getting AdSense money off of it, you know? But then at the same time, it's like, fuck, that piece of content is going to sit there for like the rest of my life with no ads on it. Or with those ads on it. That sucks. But I mean, we do it. It's like it's clearly like the best way that we're gonna make more money, you know, is just getting more sponsors. So we do it, but I'm never like super excited about it.
Because
never
I
wanted to
remember,
draw attention to it, really.
I was mind blown when whose podcast? Oh yeah, it was Tim Ferriss's podcast.
Right.
And when I had seen, he had like this basically like this page for like sponsors, and this was years ago too, so it's definitely more now. It was like 50,000 for one sponsor, and they had to commit to 3 episodes minimum.
Right.
And then he had to like vet them, and he was reading like maybe at least 5 per podcast episode. And I was just running numbers. I was like, there's this much money in podcasting. This was like maybe 2016, 17.
Right.
And I was so mind blown.
Yeah, because his shit is crazy because it's really all about what market you're in, you know? Where I think when you're thinking about people getting like 50,000 for a sponsor or whatever, you have to either be really, really big. Like I could imagine that like the Nelk Boys probably could get a $50,000 sponsorship, no problem, or way more than that maybe even. But you have to be really big, or you have to be in a niche that can demand really high rates, you know? Like there's a lot of us out here on YouTube doing like 5 to 10 or even less $1,000 brand deals and stuff. But then like, you know, like I listen to a lot of like tech podcasts and stuff, and I listen to the ads sometimes, and I'm just like, oh my God, they must be paying so fucking much for these ads because it's so pointed at their exact market. Like for instance, I heard one of like a startup hiring, and they ran the ad on this tech startup podcast, and it was just like, I'm listening to the ad, and I'm like, if 1 million people listen to this podcast, that like 10 or 20% or some huge percentage of them are going to be people who might be interested in this job. Like that ad is worth so much to them. Or when you hear an ad for a product like that has an insane turnover, like honestly, what would make sense for an ad would be for me to buy an ad on $1 million worth of game and say, I'm Adam22 and I do these live streams where I listen to your music for $100. Because if 50 people see that and fucking do it, that's $5,000, you know?
Yeah.
So it's like right there, like those are ads. Like once you find a pocket, that's like some Ty Lopez shit. He just realized that like, oh, I'm selling this course, and when I run YouTube ads, maybe I spend $5 on getting people to buy my course, but for every $5 I spend, I sell a $100 course. So then at that point, your online advertising just becomes like a spigot of money that you can turn on. And like once you find one of those good opportunities, you just turn it up and blast off on it. Now, I've always been more about the content, but I've also like seen a lot of people over the years who like figured out that model on Facebook or wherever and was just like, oh fuck, once you find that one thing that you can advertise that has a better return than what you're putting into it, it's like an ATM. It's the best business you can create.
Yeah. One thing that stuck out to me, one of the more recent things that happened, if you recall, is the Quando Rondo, when he was put up some IG story where they were kind of talking about, oh, you know, I'm done with this. And then I don't know if he actually meant like he was done with his gang,
Right.
But that sparked a conversation that made me think about it more, where people were giving the regular response of, oh, this guy joined the gang, he can't just leave.
Right.
Yeah, then it made me think of how grooming has been used wrong for a lot of Twitter things, but people joining a gang, they're kind of groomed into it.
Yeah.
In terms of, sure, he joined this gang, but what age did he join? If he's like 10, 11, 12, and to expect someone to stay their entire duration of their life for a choice that they made at 10, 11, 12,
Right.
I don't think that gets talked about enough.
Yeah, because like that's one thing people don't realize is that a lot of the gang shit that they get fed, that they get to see, is like this sort of sexy, glorified version of it. But then the reality of it for a lot of fucking kids is closer to some child soldier shit where like, you know, like I was interviewing Andre Truth, and he's talking to me about how, and I would assume that he's like removed from the real, truly violent aspects of gangbang shit or whatever, even though he's from a set. And he's talking about some like 12-year-old kid, I think it was 12, who got like put on the hood. He had a conversation with the kid's mom, and then like a week later, the kid got shot in the back. And I don't know what happened to it or whatever, but it's like, I mean, that's the fucking reality of a lot of this shit. A lot of times the reality is like way gnarlier, than what the public really gets a glimpse of. And the thing that I hate about gangbanging is that people use gangbanging in the streets as like justification for all kinds of shit that makes no fucking sense. You know, like the idea that because you're in a gang for a certain period of time, you can never leave or whatever. It's like, bro, if he wants to like avoid that or whatever, if that's giving him more trouble than it's worth, like, fuck it, man. That's his right. The same way when like, bro, remember when people were saying like, oh, Meek Mill's a pussy for turning it down with 6ix9ine or whatever? Like Meek Mill should have shot 6ix9ine in the face outside the club in Miami. It's like, so being a gangster means that you just have to crash out. You have to just do some stupid ass shit that's gonna get you locked up. And you heard infinite people like whacking shit saying like, if it was me, I would have got down. Like I would have done whatever. And it's like, yeah, it probably went really, really bad. Like I looked at Meek after that situation like, that's a grown up. He's behaving like an adult. He walked away and didn't do what he could have done, you know?
Yeah. I also think it's maybe like people are kind of looking at it from like a congruent perspective, where it's like it's very congruent for Whack 100 to get down with somebody who he's having issues with, and it would have been for Meek Mill in that case.
Yeah.
But you are correct in that it's like, oh, are they expected to do something ridiculous? But I think the worst thing is just like not being able to leave. It's like, sure, if the person made a decision at, let's say, 18 to join, then if they're like, hey, you were grown, you knew what this was, you knew what this entailed, but when you're 12, 13, you think 25 is like being 50.
Yeah.
I remember when I was a teenager, I was like, 25? I'll never hit that age.
But like, think about it. Like, he's from a non-LA place and started banging a LA gang, and then he has some horrible shit happen to him in LA. And I mean, him being in that gang had already been controversial, whether it's his own doing by throwing up fuck this set, whatever, throwing up gang signs that I would have probably told him was a bad idea. But then it's like, yo, you spending really time out here in LA, your homie got killed. I don't know if it was about anything involved in that, but like, you know, he like, when he was a kid, he was probably really young when he decided to start repping this LA gang hood, and then he's like in LA having to deal with the ramifications of it. I mean, I don't know. I feel for him because it's like, it seems like a pretty reasonable decision to just be like, all right, fuck it. Like, I don't want anything to do with this stuff, but I don't know if that's really going to do much.
Yeah.
You know,
because
he's still definitely got to be careful.
Yeah, from the outside looking in, it's like, oh, it makes sense. But then you don't know how his decisions up until that point have affected other people and how they'll feel about whatever he has to say or what change.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the street shit that we like all offer up opinions on the internet is just like us trying to fill in holes and guess.
Yeah.
Because, you know, like with the street shit, we talk about BDs and GDs, like we don't fucking know what the hell's really going on. Like, you could have, all kinds of murders could have been ordered and all kinds of shit could have gone down. There's probably so much shit that the news, the media doesn't ever get to really hear about, which is probably for the best, obviously. But I mean, it's like, it's kind of funny how people like treat it like fucking Dungeons and Dragons and like make up stories out of the available information. And in reality, there's probably a lot of stuff that we're not privy to.
The only person that I've seen that also does media that I wouldn't even say you had an issue with, but you guys had a back and forth, was Akademiks. And I recall early on you had like shown him respect. Then you guys kind of had a back and forth that was very bad. Mm-hmm. And then it seemed like you guys patched it up, but then he would kind of like, for some reason, throw shots at No Jumper,
right.
Like subtly at least. And that kind of confused me because one of the things that Akademiks goes in on Nicki for is not pushing forward talent, for instance. Though she didn't sign anybody, she doesn't have a legacy, so to speak. But Akademiks hasn't done that either. Like, he's a huge personality, but there isn't like a successor or somebody that works underneath him that's wildly popular. And that could have been an opportunity when Dom is Live was really big, but he just went in on him for, I don't even know why.
Yeah, I don't know how that started exactly.
So, like, my question is, I feel like No Jumper has done a better job of building a whole brand as opposed to Akademiks, which is a person.
Mm.
Because do you think of Akademiks as a brand or an individual?
I mean, like with the IG page, you know, you could follow the Akademiks Instagram and never even know what he looked like, right? Yeah. Or even his YouTube. Well, I guess his YouTube has clips from the podcast now. But yeah, I guess, yeah, because you look at Vlad too. Vlad has like a lot of like reoccurring interviews. He has like actual podcasts on his network, you know? So it kind of is like, I feel like that's part of the competition between everybody who's doing media sort of thing is like, there's your own content, and then there's like, can you build a business on the back of this, and can you build up other hosts and stuff? That's kind of like the other vertical, you know, besides like your own content. And yeah, it has been kind of weird that I have been able to like continue to pump out so much content while also managing a pretty objectively crazy crew of people and like building up all these different hosts. And it's like, you know, realistically for me, it's like I need to like scale back doing content like 30% so I can spend more time just peeping audition tapes and trying to get more thoughts going on the content and match people up and yada, yada, yada. Like I should spend more time orchestrating rather than just like being a participant, you know, in the content. But I think with Ak, it's like he does so well just talking to the camera. You know, like me and Vlad have always been interviewers, right? Like it's always been us and someone else. And it's like, in some ways, that's kind of like prevented me or made it so that I didn't need to make the focus like me just talking to the camera, you know? And I do have like the No Jumper show that's more about me with co-hosts, obviously. But I think with Ak, yeah, like I am surprised that he hasn't like built up more hosts because it kind of feels like what he does on Twitch and stuff is just talking, because you know he does have good hosts that are like just homies of his or like chat dudes who fucking just sit on Clubhouse or sit on a Zoom call and they talk or whatever. You know, he has that, but he hasn't really like took one under the wing and put him on camera consistently. But that's part of his problem too, is that Akademiks, his channel is all him, right? So it's like, even if he had someone that he was kind of like talking with on camera, I don't know. It's like, it would be smart if he like started a different show or like a separate show with like other hosts. He probably like plans to do that at some point, but he has like a Spotify deal. So it's like, I'm sure he feels the same way as me, where it's like, he has a lot of good ideas. It's just, there's only so much time in the day. And when you're doing very well, just making the shit that you've been doing, it could be really hard to like, be like, fuck, all right, I'm going to create this other thing that will allow me to build up hosts, even though realistically it's like, that's what's going to build up your business to be bigger than just you know?
Yeah, because I feel like you can't say that when someone thinks hip hop media, you're thinking not of an individual. Then you just say a personality.
Right.
So if you're trying to throw yourself into, let's say, the competition of hip hop media, it needs to be kind of all encompassing.
Right.
For example, like one thing that when I recognized how impressive what you did was when Vlad attempted to start a podcast underneath his with, I believe it was Rico Reckless.
And AWOL, yeah.
Yeah, and they had like maybe like 2 or 3 episodes. I'm assuming it's like defunct now because it's been months.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I mean, when I interviewed Vlad, he was talking about that as if it was an ongoing thing, I think. I honestly had conversations about doing a podcast consistently with Rico Reckless too, even before AD started podcasting on No Jumper. I had talked to Rico Reckless about it, but like the thing that ended up happening with At the End of the Day and AD was originally Rico Reckless was pretty much the first person that I kind of like thought I could give this guy a weekly show. Like he could really kind of be a thing consistently on the channel, whatever. And then he got locked up and he's always all over the place. He's not like usually in the same state for very long. So yeah, I don't know exactly what's going on with Vlad and those shows and everything. But I mean, I think that me, Vlad, and Akademiks would all say that we're the Source, XXL, MTV, BET, etc. You know, like that we see ourselves, at least on YouTube, as being the new version of those brands in the sense that they were like the people that everybody was looking to for hip hop content. And the question is how do you not also have what happened to you or what happened to them happen to you? Because we all saw them become essentially, irrelevant as time went by and technology changed and times changed, and they just were stuck in boring ass business models that didn't really speak to the people. And while they were concerned with keeping their existing business models afloat. A bunch of upstarts sort of came in and realized the power of YouTube, the power of social media, and sort of harnessed YouTube and just made a way for themselves. And so that's why I am doing stuff like being obnoxiously into TikTok, is because I just see it as like, well, maybe this is the thing that's going to keep No Jumper relevant, is if I have a personal connection with people through an app like TikTok, or even if it's Instagram Reels, whatever, maybe building that connection is going to be the thing that keeps us in the place that we are for longer, because we don't want to become fossils. And, bringing younger people on, I think that's going to be the thing that's ultimately going to keep your platform seeming new, because it's like me and Vlad, I'm 38, Vlad I guess is in his 40s, I think Akademiks is 30 or 31 or something. I mean, we all are like grown-ass men, he's the young one of this collective. And realistically, it's like, but if he were to bring on, or I was to bring on, a really great 20-year-old podcast personality, that could make the channel feel young and have a young-ass demographic watching it for years to come. So we all just have to focus on trying to bring talent in to keep it interesting, I think, and that means sometimes like taking the foot off the brakes in terms of doing content with yourself on camera. So for me, it's kind of like I'm just trying to find more space to like direct and put shit together. I don't know.
Yeah, because the avenues of, like Vlad, he has like his own, like he just has such a big library of content, interviews. That's like his thing. But I feel like it's more than like the Source XXL. Like No Jumper's kind of like a complex in the sense that it's got merchandise that people like actually like. There's like actual designs made. Like it could be like its own like clothing vertical, and also a bunch of other acts. You guys have like a bunch of other shows too. So it's more than just hip hop now. It's kind of like youth culture a little bit. More towards like adults can enjoy it too.
Yeah.
And then you've got Vlad, who I feel like he was the one that brought a lot of like crime interviews or criminals, stuff like that.
That was one of his big inventions in a way, because he has gotten so many goddamn views. Like people treat it like a hip hop podcast, but I mean, he's gotten so many views from mafia guys and old gang members that realistically don't really have anything to do with hip hop, but they're like notorious in their own way, Yeah, no, definitely. Because we're all just like really building businesses, and like, at a certain point, it just becomes like, like a mission statement seems kind of pointless in the beginning. I know like it feels kind of forced usually when businesses do it, but sometimes you have to really like ask yourself like, what is your mission statement? And I think by copping this building and stuff, this was part of my acknowledgement that our mission statement is kind of like, just make cool content, and then like make the coolest content you can, do everything you can to figure out how to make content that people are going to like, and then try to create businesses on the back of that, and don't make the business control the content, because that's the problem with Complex. I remember Axe saying that at one point, like they wouldn't greenlight a series or shoot a series unless they had a sponsor, which, I mean, as a business, that makes perfect sense. If your goal in making content is to get a brand to pay you $50,000 to put a logo on it and whatever, I mean, that makes sense. I get it. That's just business-wise, that makes total sense. If we ever get to that point, I'm going to be so fucking sad, because that's just not how I'm trying to live, Now, I mean, if we had enough sponsors that was like a reality, that you could just sponsor everything, but I mean, I don't know. That's a dark place to me. Because a lot of my biggest content of all time was stuff that wasn't even popping when I did it, So that's why, like, people saying, like, oh, you interview nobodies, you interview this random fucking guy, whatever, which people love to say and have always said since the very fucking beginning. It's like, I'm just betting. I'm just taking a bet on this kid. And maybe one day this interview will have 1 million views because he becomes a fucking legend. Or maybe it'll just sit here with 20,000 views forever. I don't fucking know. But I'm just taking a shot.
Yeah. To kind of close it out, who's somebody like business-wise that you were looking towards maybe earlier in No Jumper days versus now, where you're like, this individual or this business did this very well and I want to replicate something that they did?
The people I was looking to when I started No Jumper was Joe Rogan, and then like Joe Budden, and Combat Jack, basically. Combat Jack was interviewing mostly old school rappers. Joe Budden was like consistently talking to his homies on camera, which I thought was pretty cool. And then Joe Rogan was having these like super long, in-depth conversations with people all over the map. So I guess those were probably like my three main influences when I started. And certainly those are all influences to this day. But I wouldn't say that I like look at Joe Rogan towards the future of my business or my content or whatever, because he's kind of like found a niche that works, doubled down on it, make this content. He's happy. I fucks with it. For me, I always want to be like working towards building a brand, something that's bigger than me that could create, you know, real moments for our fans. So, I mean, when we were talking about Cole Bennett earlier, like he's somebody that really motivates me when I look at how he's handled his brand and like so many little things like we're talking about. I used to sell video posts on the No Jumper channel. Cole Bennett would never. Part of why I stopped doing that was just looking at his channel and just realized that he would never do this. Like he has so much more respect for his brand than me. I gotta stop doing this, you know? And so yeah, I look at him as like somebody who built an incredible business, or even like a Dave from Barstool as a huge one of like, damn, he fucking took his little interest and turned it into this insane fucking business. You know, he's a huge inspiration. And then, yeah, I don't know. Those are the two that really come to mind. Nelk Boys, you know, like just seeing them build all these businesses around their content has been incredible to watch. Mr. Beast obviously should be at the top of this fucking list.
Mr. Beast is a machine. It's actually unbelievable.
Logan, KSI, just see all the creators who, you know, I remember when being a YouTuber was just you try to make a video every day because you're trying to get AdSense. And that still is like a significant chunk of No Jumper's business model, but for sure I don't think that's the future. You know, KSI doing a drink or Logan doing the drink with him, that's the future. You know, like there's all kinds of different stuff that might be the future, but just creating stuff, like listening to Mr. Beast talk about how if he were to stand out at any out in front of any Walmart in America, he'd have to take photos for the rest of the day, you know? Take 100 photos in 30 minutes. So he puts his candy bar at Walmart in the front fucking section of the Walmart, and people are going to buy it for the same reason that they would take a photo with him. And so that's like the opportunity right there, is like just turn your brand that you're creating with your content into like real revenue. Just finding more of those is the move.
Well, also, why did you guys change there was a point in time where you had the clips on the main No Jumper page. What made you guys create the clips channel?
We still put some clips on the main channel too, but really it was just like diversity. Like, oh, if we have another channel and the first channel gets fucked over, then we could maybe just have to post the clips on the main interviews on the clips channel for a period of time or something like that. You know, it's just sort of, I wanted to have a separate channel because like, okay, you want to post the shorts too. We put the shorts on the clips channel because those are annoying as fuck to see in the feed on the main channel. And it's like, you know, Vlad talks about wanting to do 100 clips a day. And it's like, he might really get there. 100 clips on the clips channel seems acceptable. I like the idea of having the main channel for like the main content. And also you'd be surprised how the algorithm picks up on stuff in the clips channel, even though it has like 1/10 of the subscribers, but it does pretty well. Like, you know, it's nice to have like just a separate one because YouTube does weird shit. They've been limiting views on our main channel. The ad rates went to almost like 60% of what they normally are for 3 months in the middle of this year for no reason. It just did it, and then it just came back, and I don't know what the fuck that was about, but you know, just I feel like having a bunch of channels is probably good in the long run. I'm glad I have an Adam22 channel just because we put the Sludge Lords podcast on there, and then also like all kinds of different content I want to make. I figure I can just put it on there, you know.
Why did you decide to put that one specifically on the Adam22 channel?
It just feels like it's like specifically not hip hop, so it might be a good place for it, you know? And then, yeah, just like doing something that's totally like outside the usual No Jumper realm. And since I'm not doing anything with that channel, I figured like algorithmically it might be good to have a podcast coming out on that channel, you know?
All right, cool. Got a lot covered.
For sure. I got to interview some OnlyFans girls, bruh.
Yeah.
Patreon.com/NoJumper. Thank you.
Let's go.
Appreciate you, man.
Yeah, appreciate your time.